Talk about Ron Santo. Ron Santo, unfortunately, is not alive to enjoy this induction into the Hall of Fame. The Veterans Committee had a handful of legendary names on there. Santo never got in the Hall of Fame while he was on the regular ballot. Never got the recommended amount of votes. As your Twitter account, as you tweeted out yesterday, telling the news to people, the late Ron Santo has been elected to the Hall of Fame by the 16-member Golden Era Committee. Santo received 15 of the 16 votes. 12 are needed. So posthumously, he got in. Reading the stories, I found it very interesting that Brooks Robinson led the charge here. One of the many people consider the greatest third baseman of all time, about Ron Santo. What are your thoughts about Santo getting in and taking this long, Bernie?
I don't want to join the chorus of I wish you were here to see it, because that's the obvious. I want to join the chorus that this is well-deserved. You know, this was a different era of baseball, and we didn't have third basemen at that time other than a guy like Brooks and people like Ron Santo who could drive in runs, who could be Golden Glove players. Santo won several consecutive Golden Gloves, was in several all-star games. When teams were different, there were fewer teams in the league. The guys really had to be skilled. The pitchers went 9 innings. You know, to hit 277 was a good batting average. It wasn't 320, but it was 277 in an era when, you know, the pitchers went 9 innings. I really think that it's time for Ron Santo, and it's a blessing that it happened. And I'm happy for his family. I really am. It's a wonderful thing. It's well-deserved. You won't find a nicer guy in baseball. You didn't find a nicer guy in baseball than Ron Santo. And I think the people here were legitimately excited when his name was announced. In Butch, there were 2 guys that everyone thought would get in, and one would be Gil Hodges, the other would be Minnie Minoso. And Jerry Reinsdorf was legitimately upset that Minoso didn't make the Hall.
I want to bring up another name comparing him to Ron Santo, and I want to ask you a general question about the Hall of Fame. The name I want to bring up is Dwight Evans, and I'll pull up his numbers in a second. But when I see Santo hit 277 with 342 home runs and 1331 RBIs, those are phenomenal numbers. 9 All-Star games are good numbers too. But are they Hall of Fame numbers? The voters said no for many years. So my question to you, Bernie, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, again, you're a scout by nature. Is there an eye test, or is it mostly numbers for you?
Yeah, it's really not even numbers. It has much more to do with personality. It has much more to do when the guys from the Hall of Fame say no themselves. They don't want a lot of peripheral players to be in the Hall. The writers look at baseball players in a different way than baseball players look at baseball players, or alumni look at baseball players. There really aren't any hard and fast criterion by which somebody gets voted into the Hall. It's in the eye of the beholder, Butch. There are no set of rules that say if you meet this, and this, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. When you have a ballot in front of you, it's just like going into a voting booth and putting an X for who you in your heart feel is deserving. So when that happens, you're going to have disparity. And that's why Santo didn't get in. Maybe he ticked somebody off. Maybe you look at 277 compared to the guys that are in there at over 300 or 290 or 500 home runs. So we don't really know. The same thing can be said for, you know, should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame? What are their criteria about character? It's rather nebulous, Butch, and it's something that makes it unique. It makes it unique because it's something that people vote on, and they vote in their own conscience and their own heart. I have no answers for this. Dwight Evans, to me, is not a Hall of Famer. Is Ron Santo a Hall of Famer or a very, very good baseball player? That's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, it's interesting because here's the Santo-Evans comparison. Think about this, Bernie, for numbers. Santo hit 277. Evans hit 272. Santo had 342 home runs. Evans had 385. Santo had 1,331 RBIs. Evans had 1,384. Evans was probably a better right fielder. I don't know this from experience. Maybe you could speak to this. Than Santo was a third baseman. I mean, Evans won 8 Gold Gloves. He only went to 3 All-Star games compared to the 9 that Santo did. But again, if Santo should have been in as a regular player, the Dwight Evans people now have a case. And Dick Bresciani of the Red Sox, who made a compelling statistical case to get Jim Rice in, has bringing up the most compelling thing about Evans. Evans actually led the decade of the 80s, I believe it was, in power numbers. He was better later in his career when you add up the extra base hits, the home runs, and the RBI. So there's a compelling case for Dwight Evans now that Ron Santo got in.
It is compelling if you just look at the numbers, but the positions are different. An outfielder is different than a third baseman. So, again, you're comparing apples to oranges. Did Bill Mazeroski deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Would you talk about Bill Mazeroski if it weren't for that home run?
Right.
Those are the issues, and that's why it's such a unique institution, and it really is a unique institution. There's none like it. So, again, when you have that ballot in front of you, who's to say why? I wouldn't vote, and I'll be right out there, I wouldn't vote for Dwight Evans. I'm not sure I'd vote for Ron Santo. Do I think they are very, very good ball players? No doubt in my mind. But we have a lot of very, very good ball players.
Yep.
To me, the Hall of Fame is very special. It's the quarter-inch club, Butch, if you will. A quarter-inch of all the players deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But we don't have that set of guidelines that tell me if he does this, 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 and this, he's a Hall of Famer. That's gone. That won't come back.